Does the fetus keep falling down? Well, you know, Lumi has only really fallen down once. Interestingly, an appropriate positioning to make his birth debut. Yeah, so he's only technically fallen down one time, but I am afraid to put him back up because he fell with no warning and I don't want him to break. And this is a house that I rent, so I can't, appropriately mount him into the wall. Lumi dropped, yes. Terrified of a national abortion ban now that Trump won. It's worrisome, especially because in all likelihood, I have some concerns about the way that the Supreme Court's going to go, particularly with regards to Thomas and Alito's likely retirement. My brain is not working. Because he'll be able to replace at least those two, and they will retire under his administration, no doubt about that. And then the concern of if even one of the other Republican SCOTUS's dies or retires, that's another Trump appointee, then we're up to 6. And if even one of the Obama or Biden appointees dies or retires, we're up to 7. I mean, these are like very plausible scenarios where Trump appointed SCOTUS's could be in charge of the Supreme Court until I'm in my 70s or my whole life. I mean, law student, Trump can't put in a federal ban. It would violate a Supreme Court ruling. Well, yeah, okay, that's true. So a Supreme Court ruling has said that it's with the states. However, that was the same Supreme Court that said they weren't going to overturn it and lied under oath about that. And a Supreme Court which, after what I've just discussed with Alito and Thomas and potentially others leaving office while he's in office, would position him to quite easily have the Supreme Court go back on that decision and make it not a topic of the states. So it's complicated, but access to birth control absolutely should be a concern. So I also take issue with people saying the decisions are now passed to the states, because I guess, yeah, in technicality, like the Constitution, so the people in the states didn't vote on these bans. The people in the states, and we know that because everywhere that abortion's actually been on the ballot, with the exception of Florida, which only didn't pass because it needed a 60% majority and got like 57% support, the majority of people in the state have voted against 6-week bans. So it's with the states, but the purpose of having states in charge of legislation, not necessarily on this topic, but overall, is to give better voice to the people there, right? But that's not what's happening. We're just instating bans that were put through without a majority vote or even a percentage vote. It was never a ballot measure at all for a lot of people who live in these states. And they just get trigger lawed in, and that's the law. Like, I'm in Texas. We've never voted on whether or not we should have access to abortion. Stay in New Zealand for at least 4 more years. Yeah, I don't have any immediate plans to leave. I will definitely get permanent residency before I go anywhere. That is for certain. Yeah, he could enforce the Comstock Act and end up with a national ban without real legislation changes. There's lots of manners of getting around some of this stuff. If the Senate gets rid of the filibuster, they can make a national abortion ban 100%. And that's long been something that has been talked about and would be quite, yeah, I'm no expert on these things, but it is worrisome. Let's see. Not sure why we would think Trump would obey any laws. Yeah, Advice for someone wanting to leave. Yeah, it's tough. Immigration, moving countries is not easy under the best of circumstances, and it would be even more complex now, I would imagine. And just speaking as somebody who has left the US, it's hard too to be away from family, and I don't know, like I love that I'm here now, but it's not just like an easy thing to do. And I mean, I know all of you know that, but I do understand why people would want to and why it feels a bit desperate. And Texas can't afford to move. Yeah, that's also a massive issue for most. I mean, most people can't, right? Most people are not in a position to move out of state, let alone to another country. Terrified about birth control being taken away. There are some other options for PMDD. I think PMDD is most effectively treated currently by contraceptive pills, but I wouldn't, don't get me wrong when I say this, that is certainly a possibility, but I do not expect that in the near future we will be facing a situation where contraception is totally removed. So we'll hold it on being overly worried about that. Let's worry about the things we have right now, keeping in mind the possibilities for the future to hopefully create safeguards for some of that, but not to let ourselves get overly anxious. Sorry, I'm eating candy. Don't judge me. I have nothing else to say about that. I was going to say I've had a long day or whatever. I have nothing. I'm eating because I want to. Mute this so it's not right into the mic. I saw a comment I wanted to... this is fascism. The U.S. is the frog that slid one. Yes, that's a great comment. And I watched a really wonderful video today by Leah Miller, who's an attorney on YouTube. And if you aren't sure what fascism is not equal Nazi. The Nazis were fascists, but all fascists are not Nazis. Then you should go watch that video. I have a hair in my mouth. I'll pull it up in just a second and show you it. I'm not going to watch through it all on Stream? It's cool. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. I cannot get this hair off of my lip. Let's go. I'll show you at least though that video that I was talking about. I sent it to several people that I know today. And actually, I messaged her today to see if she'd be interested in doing some kind of collaborative video with me, which I think would be really interesting. So it is this video, and I'll just play a little bit of it for you because I think that it is very good, and then you all can go find it and watch the rest of it. But I don't want to watch all 26 minutes of it on stream because I want to get to the things that we were planning to talk about today. Let me make sure that I can get this where you can hear it, and then we will do that for a minute. And that will, you all can let me know how much of this you want to watch. We'll start at the beginning, we'll watch a little bit of it, hit some high points, and then you all can go watch the rest of it.
Island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now.
Let me know if you can hear that.
I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Out of character for me to speak at a Nazi rally. I was just in Israel, but I took the gig.
As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support.
You could hear it, but now you can't.
One more week, y'all. We can do this. Yesterday, Trump held a rally at Madison Square Garden in New York, and honestly, I find reporting on rallies lately to be really boring because, yes, Trump said some batty things, and then Kamala called him a fascist. Great, that's frankly no longer particularly newsworthy. But last night's rally was a bit different, just in the level of racist, bigoted, hateful vitriol, which was turned up to 11. Frankly, Trump is feeling the heat because Kamala is out fundraising him, and she's pulling ahead of him in many polls, so he's leaning into what he does best, saying incendiary things in the hopes that his base will be angry enough to show up in droves on election day, and if there aren't enough for him to win, they'll be angry enough to believe the election stealing lies afterwards and maybe succeed in their coup this time. And this hateful xenophobic rhetoric, combined with his connections to Project 2025 and his calls for mass deportations and attacking the enemy from within.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Has many people, including Kamala Harris, sounding alarm bells about fascism. Trump even speaks positively about Hitler and is looking for generals with the same level of loyalty as he had. And so while I think comparing politicians and movements to Hitler and Nazis is a bit overblown generally, and I avoid doing it because it should be reserved for when the comparison is actually particularly apt, I think we have reached a point where the comparison is particularly apt. So today we're breaking down the fascist things Trump has said during his campaign and comparing that to Hitler. We all study the Holocaust in school and learn a lot about the aftermath of World War II, but taking a look at the years leading up to the war, the things Hitler said and the way he took power is, let's just say, instructive. And all the more reason to show up and vote this year for Kamala Harris, whether you like it or not, frankly. Let's get into it.
So I think you guys just let me know how much of you want to watch this. It's really good, and I have a few things I can add here and there, but really I just like, this is one that I will save and keep coming back to because it's not only just incredibly enlightening, but it makes it, sorry, I'm talking over her.
And once you,
it makes it obvious that the path to fascism is incredibly important to understand rather than evaluating, are we Nazi Germany? No, obviously the US is not there yet, but how did Nazi Germany get to the point of being that? And this video is so good for that.
First, let's just define fascism. This word gets thrown around a lot, so it's worth giving it a technical definition. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, fascism is a political ideology and mass movement. Although fascist parties and movements differed significantly from one another, they had many characteristics in common, including extreme militaristic nationalism, contempt for electoral democracy and political and cultural liberalism, a belief in natural social hierarchy and the rule of elites, and the desire to create a people's community in which individual interests would be subordinated to the good of the nation. Fascist is seen as an insult and a dirty word today, and for good reason, but in its heyday it was proudly and openly embraced. Europe's first fascist leader was Benito Mussolini, whose National Fascist Party took power in 1922. Fascism spread throughout Europe in the years between the two world wars, largely as a backlash against the results of World War I. Virtually every European country had a fascist faction or party, and many countries saw those parties take power, including, of course, Italy and Germany. There were also fascist movements outside Europe, and I don't mean to be Eurocentric here, but this isn't a treatise on fascism, and I'm focusing on Hitler today, which requires talking mainly about Europe.
So, when we talk about this too, someone had just mentioned in the chat, like, oh, deportations lead to concentration camps. And yes, I think that it's important that we talk about, though, how that stepwise fashion happens. First off, 1 in 8-ish US citizens has either a close friend or close family member who is an undocumented immigrant, meaning 1 in 8 families will have somebody that they love or care about deported under this plan. Additionally, millions and millions of people being deported does not just involve they turn up and you put them on a plane, right? You got to figure out who they are with mass sweeps. You got to find out a place to put them because there has to be some legislative process before the deportation happens. In that process, you inevitably will end up taking out some people who are here legally, a majority of people who came across as children or decades ago and have been living here causing no problems, contributing to the US economy and workforce since, but are just undocumented. And then you will also end up needing to put them all places. So when you are removing a subset of a population, which millions of people is a subset of the population, you need to concentrate them somewhere while they're waiting for it to go through the legal system. And that takes time. And when you need to concentrate a bunch of people in a one area where you can keep track of them and they can't go anywhere for a period of time until you can move them to a country they may have never even lived in their conscious memory. What do we call that? It's like, and then what do we do when all these people are concentrated into a certain area where they are having to stay while awaiting millions of legislative cases to go through, clogging up the court systems? Typical judicial processes can't keep going. And then you have all these people, you have a clogged up judicial system, and you're costing taxpayers so much money keeping them here, then what happens? When deportation becomes too expensive and too much of a drain on the judicial system, what happens? You stop the judicial part, and then what happens after that? You stop the deportation part. This is history, right? We know what happens, and it's terrifying, and it should be.
Like other political ideologies, fascism is unique because it doesn't have one clear theoretical framework, and instead it adapts to the specific cultural and historical conditions depending on where in the world it manifests. It is generally an amalgamation of a few key ideas.
Shall we keep watching this, or do we want to move on to discussing the maternal mortality cases, and you all can finish this video in your own time? I'm happy to do whatever. I have plenty of time to stream today. Hello from New Mexico. Left Texas 7 years ago. Couldn't take it anymore. Happy to have found you. Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Seems like most people want to move on to the maternal mortality discussion, which is perfect. Fair enough. That's what we came here to do. If we finish that and we want to come back to Legia's video, we will. If we want to move on to other discussions after that, we will. But I do want to show you one more time this video and where you can find it in case you'd like to finish it and we don't come back to it today. So, Legia Miller, she's an attorney from the US, and it's this video, which is the, as of the time of making this video, 4th video down on her most recent videos. Pretty much all of us are immigrants. Yeah, true. Anyway, so with regards to what I was saying a second ago, and then we'll wrap up this discussion, the process of, deportation becomes more and more expensive. The judicial system gets clogged. Things become worse and worse from a optics standpoint. And then what happens? Well, nothing good. The other alternative here, right, is impossible to ignore. It would be far more sensical from a tax standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a humanely treating other people standpoint, to simply process and allow immigrants who are currently undocumented to get documented and to focus on what needs to be done at the border to prevent people from coming across who are undocumented, and to streamline the process of getting documented immigration or refugee status or whatever it needs to be. So it's kind of shocking to me how people don't think that that's a better option when it makes sense financially and it doesn't have the same downstream effect of mass deportation. But yeah, we can't afford even to mass deport people, which is why I'm saying, what happens when people get tired of the taxes costing all of that money for deporting people that they care about? And then we have a bunch of people concentrated in one area and can't pay to take them to some country they may not even know anything about. Yeah, tariffs are another thing. It's really interesting, really, because tariffs are not actually going to cost China, and that's the way they've been presented, which is weird. Like, if you took any kind of poli-sci classes, you know that tariffs are charged to the importer, and then inevitably that is passed to the consumer. So I don't understand why people who are worried about the economy would be in favor of tariffs, because the cost of goods imported from China is going to go up. And it's not like we have manufacturing in the States to replace most of those. So tariffs could be good if it creates, actually, I think in a lot of situations, tariffs would be quite beneficial if you are, leaning really left, because they might create a situation where people who are importing would be less likely to import cheaply made goods from somewhere else and go with the US manufacturing so they don't have to pay those. But that only works when you're trying to combat massive manufacturing outsourcing that's being done for monetary reasons from capitalist entities in a singular sector where you can replace that manufacturing within the US. So it like a total tariff on anything from a certain country, particularly one that does a lot of manufacturing that we can't replace in the States, is just, it's just going to make things more expensive for the average American. Inflation is going to get worse with that. We have an ad break coming up in 2 minutes. I'll start the maternal mortality after that. So y'all let me know when you're back from ads. Until then, we'll just keep riffing a little bit on this. But I don't understand why people who want to approach the economy in terms of things are too expensive for me right now would be in favor of tariffs. I don't understand. But if you're here and you are in favor of broad tariffs to China, please let me know. Yeah, kids with parents that are undocumented, real problem. You know, you have a 10-year-old, parents are undocumented. You're going to deport the 10-year-old, separate the families. If mifepristone and misoprostol are blocked nationally, are there other drugs that could take their place? Not really. Ad break in 1 minute. If you'd like to subscribe, please do. Or you could get gifted a subscription if you're lucky. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free with Amazon Prime. But also, we will take a little break, just chat about this during the ad break, and y'all let me know when we're back, and then we'll move on to the discussion about maternal mortality. Could I please explain tariffs, Trump? That's not necessary. He knows what he's doing. Kids are deported with their parents. I don't know. That's deporting documented U.S. citizens. Can you do that? Can you deport a documented U.S. citizen? Do you think they're going to pay to do that? The general idea is to get more things to be manufactured in the U.S. Well, yeah, yes, agree. When you do it in like a singular sector, but we can't replace the whole of Chinese manufacturing. So that's not the goal with these tariffs. Aren't they trying to get rid of birthright citizenship? I'm not sure. And I mean, New Zealand doesn't have that. So I'm not sure that it would even necessarily be something. I'd have to know more about it to decide how I felt about it, but it wouldn't be like retroactive. You can't just go like, actually, now we don't do birthright citizenship. So sorry about 15 years ago when they told you were a US citizen, you're not anymore. I just, and honestly, you know what, we have concepts of a plan, right? Like, I don't even know if the administration has thought through a lot of this. Making it retroactive on anchor babies. No way. No way. I don't think there's any way you could do that. You cannot remove someone's citizenship retroactively. There would be no precedent for that. Surely you can't do that. Like, from a legal sense. Everyone's back from ads. Good. Some of you are, some of you aren't. That's all right. We're waiting on you still. Absolutely would not put it past putting the kids up for adoption. That's awful. Yeah, sorry, y'all. I don't have a lot of control over the ads or how many you get, if you get them. I don't even know how it works. I'm just here to talk to my camera and you. Birthright citizenship is, hang on, I want to read that comment. Is explicitly protected by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. It would require a constitutional amendment to overturn birthright citizenship or the Supreme Court redefining this amendment like they did to overturn Roe v. Wade. Is there a way to force us to remove our constitution? I don't know. This same thing I was talking about earlier. Like, banning contraception is not something I would ever say is like, oh, that could never happen. That's like not soon, I would imagine, because most people I would think that was ridiculous. So I'm done saying that could never happen because I really didn't think Roe v. Wade would ever be overturned. And even though I knew the race was close, I truly did not think the US population would re-elect Trump. And I certainly didn't foresee a popular vote win for the first time in my voting ability history. So I would never say it can't happen, but I don't think we need to get ourselves up in arms about that yet. We need to be aware of it. We need to pay attention, but I don't think we need to personally worry about it just yet. I used to be very anti-abortion, not anymore. Before we met, my partner became pregnant after being assaulted. Just watching my language here because I'm not sure what is and isn't allowed on Twitch. She's from the Philippines, did not know that New Zealand would look after her. Fled back to the Philippines, secretly got an abortion pill, had to go through delivering the fetus on her own in pain, trying to stay quiet so nobody would know. Yeah, that's terrible. Worries be my middle name. Yeah, I mean, again, it's like, I understand why people worry, and I'm definitely not saying we shouldn't worry about it at all. I just think it's not time yet.